Welcome, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started now. Thank you all for coming today, and I'd like to, as you've been seeing our sponsors, thank all of the people from our sponsor organizations who are here. This would not be possible without you. Especially would like to give a shout out to Strata Clean Energy and Marcus Wilhelm, who's been our key, indispensable sponsor for the 10-year history of this event. To get going, I would like to introduce our MC for this morning, our Vice Chancellor for Research. We're very happy to have you here this morning, Professor Penny Larsen. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everybody. I'm really happy to be here, and this is just an amazing audience and an amazing conference, and the agenda looks just fantastic. So I'd like to extend my welcome to the 10th Annual Cleantech Summit, and the summit has grown every year, which can be attributed to the very strong partnership between the co-hosts of this event, UNC's Institute for the Environment, and the Keenan-Flagler Business School's Ackerman Center for Excellence in Sustainability. And there's a ton of extra and very hard work behind the scenes from Mike, from Greg, from Marcus, and this is just going to be an incredible couple of days. So the shared mission of these institutes are to accelerate solutions to social and environmental sustainability. And this is what convenes bright minds in academia and industry year after year to address some of the most critical issues faced by our state and the nation. And this year will be the largest summit yet, and the theme, Innovating to a Clean Economy, is particularly salient as we focus our research enterprise here at Carolina to grow research that catalyzes innovation and stimulates economic growth. And successful innovation requires collaborations with industry partners, organizations, and communities. And together we can unleash a wave of fresh ideas and collaborative energy propelling us towards groundbreaking solutions and real-world applications. So technological and scientific breakthroughs are opening doors to uncharted territories, and with research really catalyzing a lot of this work. And booming regional industries are hungry for the expertise, talent, and innovation that we bring to the table. So it's really time for us to seize this opportunity. And the momentum is palatable. You can feel it out in the hallways this morning and in the room today. And this is exactly where we can harness it as we bring together partners from the university side and also from the industry and governmental side. And this is exactly why the Cleantech Summit exists, to really unite these brilliant minds across the public and private sectors. And together we'll foster the innovation and leadership that will propel the Southeast's clean tech economy to new heights. And so over the next 2 days, let's ignite productive conversations, expand the knowledge base, and walk away brimming with ideas for solutions that will make a real difference. So welcome, and I'm really excited for this morning session in particular. It's my pleasure to introduce your first keynote speaker of the session. And this is Diane Leopold, who is the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer for Dominion Energy. She joined the company in 1995, and she's held a wide range of executive roles in operational, financial, and commercial sectors. She's the senior executive responsible for all of the company's operating segments and related construction and innovation functions, as well as contracted assets, which include more than 50 solar generating facilities. And she also serves on various industry, nonprofit, and community boards, including Nuclear Electric Energy Limited, Grow Capital Jobs Foundation, the Hampton Roads Alliance, and the Jamestown Yorktown Foundation and World Pediatric Project. And Leopold serves on the executive committee board and is past chair of the American Gas Association. She's also past chair of the Interstate Natural Gas Association of America. So please help me welcome Diane.
All right, good morning, everybody. So it is an honor to be with you here today. This is an exciting time to be part of the energy industry in the United States. The diversity of topics and discussions on the agenda for this summit are case in point. For the last 2 decades, the energy industry has been undergoing remarkable change as we've been progressing towards cleaner energy sources. Today, as we work to accelerate the transition to clean energy, the industry is at the confluence of 3 simultaneous and dramatic shifts: the decarbonization of the power sector, unprecedented demand growth, and the increasing need for security and reliability, all while there's no cohesive national energy policy and direction that seems to change from administration to administration, party to party, and state to state. I'm privileged to have the opportunity, am I like on the keyboard and moving that around? I just realized that. I'm going to just move that if that's okay. Okay. So I'm privileged to have the opportunity to participate on the front lines of this energy transformation. At Dominion Energy, we're headquartered in Richmond, Virginia, and currently serve about 6 million customers. This includes Virginia, the Carolinas, and we serve with both electricity and natural gas. Our mission is critical, providing reliable, affordable, and increasingly clean energy that powers our customers every day. It's a mission statement that reflects the intersection of the trends I mentioned, balancing the goals of providing consistent, secure power with a growing demand for cleaner and cleaner power sources, all while keeping that power affordable. It's an important goal, but those demands do not always naturally align. Given the importance to our industry and to our nation of succeeding simultaneously on all 3 of these trends, I wanted to spend a few minutes on each of them and then tell you why I'm optimistic that we can make meaningful progress. So first, decarbonization. I look at decarbonization as having 3 major step changes. Phase 1 occurred in the last decade, and it was driven by the shift from coal to natural gas. In 2005, when consumption of coal for electric production hit its peak in the United States, coal made up about 50% of the total electric production nationwide. Dominion's was at about 47%. But it was around this time when the coal to gas phase of decarbonization picked up steam. Gas had several benefits that made it an attractive alternative to coal. It was becoming cheaper, new technology was unlocking previously inaccessible gas reserves. It emitted less pollutants, such as particulate matter, nitrous oxide, and sulfur dioxide. In addition, newer technologies were making natural gas power generation far more efficient, such that these units were emitting less than 50% of the newer coal plant equivalent. So many power producers, including Dominion Energy, started this coal to gas transition, such that in 2010, electricity generated from coal had been cut in half, while electricity from natural gas had doubled. So while fossil fuels today still make up 60% of the nation's total power production, down from 70% in 2005, the electric power sector has reduced greenhouse gas emissions by more than 1/3, about 36% in that same time frame. Dominion Energy has cut carbon production by 50% in that same time frame. But certainly that alone would never get us to a net zero future. So that's phase 1. Phase 2 is the decarbonization step change that's taking place right now in this decade. It's dominated by a meteoric rise in renewables, specifically solar and wind resources being connected to the grid. Other sectors of the American economy have also contributed to decarbonization, but not nearly at the same rate as the power sector. The rise of renewables was bolstered by improving technologies and tax incentives. In the period from 2010 until today, total generation from wind and solar have increased by 32 times over. And by the end of the year, renewables made up 21% of nationwide demand at the end of last year. So while we're making very good progress, the country still has a long way to go. In 2005, solar didn't even exist at Dominion Energy, and now we have over 9 gigawatts in service or under development. That's enough to power 2.2 million homes and businesses. And we're currently engaged in a renewable energy project that is the largest project our company has ever taken on, and it will be the largest renewable project in North America. It's the Coastal Virginia Offshore Wind Project. It is 27 miles off the coast of Virginia Beach. It will consist of 176 wind turbines spread over 113,000 acre lease area. So to give you a feel for that, that's about 8 times the size of the Chapel Hill geographic footprint. It's going to cost just under $9.8 billion, just under $10 billion. We're just starting construction now, and it will be in service by the end of 2026. So here are just a few other fun facts about this mega project. The foundations, the monopiles and transition pieces that hold the wind turbine towers and generator and blades, those foundations alone are these huge steel cylinders coming up from the ocean floor. They're the length of an entire football field and weigh over 1,500 metric tons each, so 176 of these. Once the turbine towers are placed on top, there's enough primary steel for our entire project, 400,000 metric tons, to build 6 aircraft carriers. The major cables that connect the turbines to their offshore substations and then come to shore is over 600 miles, so that's from here to about Toledo, Ohio. And the total structure, so the foundations that are the piece that's above the water, the towers, the blades, the generator itself, measures about 800 feet above sea level. So that's the Washington Monument with the Statue of Liberty on top of it. So you get it. Everything is really big, including the difference it's going to make to support decarbonization. It will serve about 660,000 homes and businesses at peak output, and it's an incredibly exciting project that we hope will jumpstart the offshore wind industry in the United States and contribute significantly to a lower carbon future. But achieving decarbonization or decarbonized power generation must include more than just renewables. In this past decade, Dominion Energy committed to invest in all 7 of our nuclear units that we operate in Virginia, Connecticut, and South Carolina. They provide enough carbon-free power for over 3 million homes. And these investments that we're making will extend the lives of this resource from 60 years to 80 years. That's the second life extension. And finally, during this phase, we're also beginning to deploy some utility scale battery storage. This allows more solar and wind to be integrated into our power grid reliably. We expect to install around 1,200 megawatts of large-scale battery storage by the end of this decade. So phase 1 and 2 help the power industry make great strides. Both of these are major step changes in the trajectory for total carbon emissions. But even continuing with renewables at the pace that we are now, there's still going to be gaps to get to net zero, let alone a carbon-free future. So the third phase that will take place in the next decade will need to add something else to this recipe to allow for the next step change. And to truly get to a carbon-free grid, it may take a 4th phase in the 2040s. These phases will require a lot of what we're doing now, using less coal, ramping down natural gas, aggressively building solar, wind, and storage, and keeping our nuclear units running. but we also need the support of emerging technologies. Some of the most promising technologies for phases 3 and 4 in the power generation space include advanced nuclear reactors, green hydrogen, carbon capture and storage, and longer duration batteries. And equally important, phases 3 and 4 will need help from public policy in the form of financial incentives, streamlined permitting processes, and risk sharing to help make implementation of these new technologies a realistic possibility. So the second big trend in the electric power sector I want to discuss today is the unprecedented growth for demand in electricity across the nation. So while we're looking to replace our current power generation fleet with cleaner and cleaner resources, demand is on the rise and in a really big way. The electrification of everything and datafication in every corner of our society are behind this shift. I mentioned earlier that our sector has reduced greenhouse gas emissions by 36%, by about a third since 2005. Other sectors have not fared quite that well. Greenhouse gas emissions from transportation has declined about 7%. From manufacturing, about 9%, and residential greenhouse gas emissions from the use of natural gas, oil, or even wood for heating or cooking has actually increased by 5% over this time. So electrification is driven by the desire to decarbonize the broader economy, in part because the electric sector has done it well. Electric vehicle sales continue to rise, and the Biden administration set a goal to make half of all new vehicles sold in the U.S. by 2030 electric vehicles. Not to mention, we need to build a network of 500,000 chargers to be able to accommodate that. And the U.S. is not alone. According to a new report from Reuters, global EV sales surpassed 1.1 million cars just in the month of January, up from 660,000 in January of last year. So EVs now make up about 20% of all new auto sales and are expected to make up about 55% of the new car market by 2030. Closer to home, one report is estimating as many as 2 out of 3 new cars sold within our service territory are expected to be electric by the early next decade, or roughly 250,000 new EVs each year, just in that region. We estimate that about 5 electric vehicles is the same amount of electricity as an average home. So that will result in a significant increase in our demand. But in reality, it's not just electrification of cars that we're seeing. It's the electrification of some manufacturing, heavy haul transportation, ports, buildings, conversions from gas furnaces to heat pumps, and many other aspects of our day-to-day lives that will continue to drive demand further. Layer on top of that the revolution we're seeing in our digital lives, or the datafication of our society. I'm sure many of you have been reading about the proliferation of data centers. According to the International Energy Agency, in 2022, the nation's 2,700 data centers consumed about 4% of the nation's electricity. Dominion has more than 400 data centers already connected within our service territory. In Loudoun County, Virginia, which is in northern Virginia near Dulles Airport, we serve what's called Data Center Alley. It's the largest data center market in the world. It's larger than the next 5 biggest U.S. data center markets combined, and it's also larger than the next 4 international data center markets combined. So load from data centers has grown in our own Virginia service territory from just over 450 megawatts in 2013, so 10 years ago, to over 4,000 today, so a 10-fold increase. That's the same load as about 1 million homes and businesses on our system. So just over 400 facilities is about the same amount of power demand as 1 million homes. The demand was already increasing thanks to the use of cloud computing, remote working, streaming services, and other social media. But the power density needed to drive generative artificial intelligence is even higher. So data centers are getting bigger and growing into their capacity faster. As a case in point, we're projecting load from data centers to more than double in the next 8 years. Because of these two drivers of electrification and datafication, Dominion Energy is seeing the most significant demand growth in our company's history, and there are no signs of that demand abating. 6 of the top 10 all-time overall peak demands were in the last 12 months. Our peak summer load in our region is expected to grow at 5.5% per year for the next 10 years, which is nearly 3 times our historical average. So not only do we need to build enough generation to replace higher emitting sources to decarbonize our grid and meet this new demand, but we have to address the issues related to demand growth, and we have to deliver it. The grid actually needs to respond to all these trends I've discussed so far. To allow for the decarbonization of the power generation itself, we need the grid to be able to respond more dynamically to intermittent generation. To allow for the electrification of everything, we need to add fast charging networks to our grid and modernize our distribution network to allow for the two-way communication from buildings and cars to and from the grid. And to respond to datafication, we need to add a ton of new transmission lines. Current predictions indicate that by 2050, the U.S. will need to triple the size of the transmission grid to meet this need. At our company alone, we plan to invest $2.5 billion every year to help provide the transmission highway to meet the demand growth and transport the renewable power to our customers. That's just the dollars, but securing the land rights, the regulatory approvals, and project materials to build hundreds of miles of transmission infrastructure is not a quick or simple process. A typical large-scale transmission project can take 5 and sometimes up to 10 years to move from design to operations. This process is out of step with the need for bigger and faster, and the demand for power does not tend to wait. But several new and important emerging technologies are coming rapidly. Dominion Energy and others are investing in microgrids, vehicle-to-grid initiatives, rapid grid self-healing tools, more modular substations, and enhanced analytics to improve the capacity of the grid and to allow the customer to make the best choices, just to name a few technologies. These investments are enabling us to improve operations by being more proactive than reactive. They reduce outages and help bring new capacity to the grid to meet this increasing demand. Many of these technologies are promising, but none will be deployed at scale overnight. So the need for decarbonization, coupled with datafication and the electrification of everything, is making our economy even more dependent on the electric sector. While the patience for power outages have always been low, because of this increased dependence, the consequences of outages are increasing. Our customers expect and deserve consistent, reliable, and always-on power. This brings me to our third trend, the increasing need for reliability and energy security. And this is not simply about streaming Netflix without interruption or charging a Nintendo Switch. When ice storms struck Texas in 2021, an unprepared grid buckled, and everyday life was severely disrupted, and tragically, several died. Many from hypothermia when there was no energy to heat their homes. Closer to home, here in North Carolina and Virginia, there were significant outages from Winter Storm Elliott just last year. and we've all seen the consequences of wildfires in California, Hawaii, and Texas. So these are all weather-related examples, but geopolitical issues such as European dependence on Russian oil and gas have impaired Europe's ability to stay on the trajectory to meet its decarbonization goals. In addition, some countries control some of the key raw materials that go into solar panels and batteries. This could add risk to our energy independence and therefore our ability to decarbonize and meet our demand growth. And obviously, because the electric grid is part of our nation's critical infrastructure and is becoming increasingly two-way and increasingly digital, it is a prime target for cyber attacks. Dominion Energy gets 3 billion attempted attacks every month. Billion, with a B. And the bad actors only have to be lucky once to cause irreparable harm. And just like Europe learned after the invasion of Ukraine, or we all learned after the pandemic, we cannot be overly dependent on any country or any supply source when our entire economy and national security are dependent upon it. The industry responded to this changing environment. Physical and cybersecurity continues to evolve and improve to protect our critical infrastructure, and a serious discussion on the importance of supply chain and infrastructure diversity and supply diversity have all been incorporated into our planning processes. So these are large issues for sure. I want to spend my last moments with you telling you why I'm optimistic we can simultaneously make dramatic progress on all three of these trends. Because in the end, meeting decarbonization goals when we can't meet demand growth or have energy security, or meeting demand growth while our carbon footprint remains high is not success. We need to decarbonize. We must meet the demands of a changing economy, and it is critical to ensure national security. So how do we make progress? Now bear with me because what I'm about to say may seem kind of contrary to the idea of optimism for making progress, but part of the solution does rest with politics. Energy and utility companies play a large role in the energy transition, but to meet the challenges ahead, we need the alignment of policymakers, industry leaders, environmental advocates, our customers, and the financial and scientific communities. In the absence of a unified national energy policy, we need to find a way to agree on something that can move policy forward at the pace of technology. And that can sound pretty implausible, I know, but alignment across a broad range of stakeholders, it's not something we typically have a lot of examples of, but I want to share 3 examples with you where I believe there's momentum towards such an alignment. And I don't mean for this to be a comprehensive list, but if we want to begin to move forward, not with baby steps, but with movement towards that 3rd and 4th step change, then we need to continue to aggressively work on the grid upgrades and renewable investments of this decade, but set ourselves up for a roadmap for the future. So let me start with generation. Our biggest need is for carbon-free, affordable, and around-the-clock generation, otherwise known as baseload power. Solar and wind are incredibly important, but they're not baseload, and fossil generation is certainly not carbon-free. But the need of the digital economy is baseload. Data centers need power all the time. The 3 main technologies being researched to meet these needs are green hydrogen, carbon capture and storage, and advanced nuclear. This last one, advanced nuclear, seems to have some significant momentum across a majority of the stakeholders I mentioned. Both sides of the aisle, many, though not all, environmental groups and industry leaders are all very interested in carbon-free advanced nuclear technologies. Meanwhile, technology companies are moving to request federal design authorizations. They're working to lay the groundwork to make this a reality in the next decade. Federal incentives, including the IIJA, and the governors of numerous red and blue states are looking at legislation to support development. And utilities across the country are spending significant time researching the technologies, looking at potential viable sites for their deployment. These units are smaller, more modular, and more flexible. And customers interested in large amounts of carbon-free power are very interested. If deployed at scale, this can potentially be an affordable way of meeting demand growth, decarbonization, and energy security. Without the typical tit-for-tat opposition approach, I believe it's possible to cut years off the typical development time and provide more clarity to allow companies to accelerate investment. For my second example, let me discuss energy storage. To provide the needs of the grid as we accelerate the integration of renewables, we need longer duration storage. When Winter Storm Elliott came through, we needed far more than the typical 4-hour of battery storage. In addition, we need battery raw materials that are not competing with EV batteries, and we need batteries that are not dependent upon rare earth materials in the control of other nations. Here again, there can be real progress. We're initiating the testing of 2 different long-duration batteries right now. Through a partnership with Form Energy and EOS Energy Enterprises, we plan to test longer duration batteries. These iron-air and zinc hybrid batteries could be transformational for the industry because they could discharge energy for multiple days as compared to the 4 hours or less that most batteries across the industry average. Iron air is basically rust, something I would not particularly call a rare earth material. It could be deployed at scale, and there's certainly an ample supply chain. So this is a great example of where we may have an affordable solution that can allow for more renewables while meeting the demand growth and the need for energy security. And for my final example, I'd like to discuss our LOX campus. This is an innovation hub that's currently under construction, and it will serve as a living laboratory for electric transmission and distribution projects. We're collaborating with several universities, manufacturers, R&D organizations, and other test laboratories to develop the grid of the future. The campus features a high-voltage laboratory, a technical support building with labs and learning centers, and a microgrid. Together with our partners, we are going to test cutting-edge technologies in an energized, real-time environment prior to installing them on the grid. This work is encouraging because it will help the industry make smart, research-based investments to deploy at scale that can meet the demand growth, support decarbonization, and improve grid resiliency. Pilots like this are moving rapidly, and some of these advanced technologies hold great promise. So while it wouldn't hurt to have a cohesive national energy policy pushing us all forward with a clear direction, technology is most often driven by need, and we certainly have a need. And while often there is opposition to infrastructure, there are certain areas like offshore wind or some of the new technologies I've just mentioned that get bipartisan support because they improve the environment and make real progress towards addressing climate change. They add jobs and improve the economy, and they ensure our nation's security. We are developing a host of real solutions that are moving forward. There is no one answer, no magic bullet or easy fix, but there are dozens of exciting innovations around which we can rally for success that are at the epicenter of the real energy transition, one where decarbonization meets demand growth, meets energy security. Thank you.